Okay, hello everyone. In today's video is going to be a list of 10 albums, and I know I said I'd do this in a previous video, I don't remember which one, but I said I'd do some top 10 lists or 10 things. This is going to be a 10 things video. This is going to be, of course, 10 albums that I recommend that you may not have heard of before. If you're into metal or drum and bass or punk or hip hop, then I recommend listening to these albums. And number one is going to be Milo Goes to College by Descendents. Now, I did do a review on this a while back when I looked a lot younger, back before I had the facial hair and everything. Yeah, this album, of course, is by a band that really helped spawn the whole Southern California hardcore scene, or so-called hardcore scene, really, and kind of pop punk stuff along with it, mixed in it with it. So this album definitely did that very well. This is like one of the most perfect albums I've ever heard as of doing that as well. There's no album that really comes close to even sounding like this album, even by the Descendents. The second album had a lot of differences. The third album had a lot of differences. And Descendents in general have always been good at making each album sound a little bit different, especially back in the day. And they still do, but they did even more back in the day. They did even more work with making each album sound unique. And this one is definitely, I think, a little bit more on the hardcore side than their next couple albums. But yeah, this album definitely has pretty much almost everything in it, you know? Almost everything you kind of want out of really a punk band. And this is the one I think more people should hear, though this album is kind of praised by the whole punk scene. Though I feel like more people should hear about this album because it definitely is a crucial one to the punk scene that I feel like more people should listen to. So number two is going to be Allroy's Revenge by All. Now this is another album. The band All, in case you don't know, is basically all the members of Descendents except Milo. They made a separate band. There's been a couple different vocalists of the band. This is the one with Scott Reynolds in it, back when he was in the band. He's an amazing singer, by the way. And this is a guy that basically, I think, started in All. Though he's in another band now. I think he's in Down by Law now, I believe. I haven't listened to much by them, but I really want to get into them more. But listening to this album, definitely I do heavily enjoy Scott Reynolds' vocals in this. I think it definitely are pretty unique for a punk band for sure, and I kind of missed when he was in the band. I do like the newer singer, don't get me wrong, I do like his vocals too, but I like Scott Reynolds the best out of all three of the singers they've had. But this album had quite a bit of things to it. It had anything from, you know, songs like She's My Ex, of course, about, you know, a girl. There's the song Mary too, which is another absolutely great song, probably my favorite song in the album, because just the pure enjoyable melody in it, pure sweet melody in it, and I like how it gets higher in the last chorus before the song ends. That makes it so much better. I heard another recording of the song as well when Scott Reynolds was in his first band, actually called Three Car Pile Up, and that was, of course, they made the song Mary back then, and it was, I think, a demo, I believe. I don't know. I tried to find really what this was supposed to be, whether it was on an EP or something. I couldn't figure it out, but this was originally a Three Car Pile Up song, and it turned into this amazing masterpiece. It still sounded good on the original one, but the final one that All made is definitely my favorite one, due to the fact that Bill Stevenson really knew how to make the instrumentation of the song even better. Of course, the original instrumentation was still good, but he added more as of like bass parts and guitar parts, really more of a melody, because Bill Stevenson, I think, was kind of a bit of a melody and rhythm kind of guy in general, which I think he did very well in both Descendents and All. He's done both very well, and he's also been a very great songwriter, and I think this song definitely shows kind of his skill in making melodies even better. So Mary is a great song. There's many other great songs in this album as well. There's Man of Steel. There's New Theme, which is just the instrumental. It's an absolutely great instrumental, by the way. I'd say it's about as good as the first one called Theme from Descendants. That was an instrumental as well. New Theme was also an instrumental and an opener for the album. And I thought it was definitely a pretty solid one. I thought the guitar in it was great. I thought the beat was great. And definitely is a great opener for the album. And I wish bands did instrumentals like that more often as openers. So, All Roy's Revenge is definitely a great album, and I definitely recommend. And the third one is CD Type Thing by Big Drill Car. Now, Big Drill Car is another band on Cruise Records, along with All, that made absolutely great melodies and had, I think, 2 or 3 vocal tracks a lot of the time. This is a band from the 80s as well, and definitely had that really crisp sound of the 80s, and really was a kind of more known underground band, but still an underground band from Southern California back then, that was mainly in it to, just have fun, and not really go out there to be famous. That was not really their intent at all. And they're still not famous, but I definitely do recommend this album because of the absolutely great melodies and harmonies in this album, with songs, of course, like No Need, songs like that. I don't think there's a music video for that song, but there's been a couple other music videos. There's In Green Fields, which is an absolutely amazing song. It is definitely my favorite song by Big Drill Car. The guitar intro into it, every time I hear it, brings me back to those memories of first hearing this band back when I was like 14 or 15 years old. I discovered them actually through one of Tom DeLonge's interviews. I think it was The Pursuit of Tone. I'm pretty sure. I'm like, who the heck's this? I look them up and I'm like, damn, this band's actually really amazing. And it got me into a lot of other underground bands of the Southern California scene. And I was definitely pretty pleased with them. I thought the melodies and harmonies are absolutely great. In general having fun aspect of these bands. I like their attitude with just, having fun and being young. I've always really enjoyed that with these bands. So this next one is going to be a metal album, of course. This is one I heard a long time ago, back when I was first discovering, metal. I discovered this album, and this is kind of surprising for me because Chevelle is kind of a little bit mainstream, though this album I don't think is as known as it should be. This album is Chevelle's first album before they really became famous with their next album, Wonder What's Next, which is also a great album as well. And this album, I think, is definitely pretty unique because it kind of shows what a lot of metal bands start out as, but they did it in a way that really had a message to it as well. There's lots of unique messages in with a lot of these songs. Like Maya, there was the song Point Number One, which I think had a great instrumental. There's an instrumental for the first track, which then led on into Point Number One, which I thought definitely did a very good job at it. And pretty much, all that into this makes this an all-around great album. So this is one I definitely recommend for anyone that wants to hear, just raw energy and emotion. I definitely think this is a good one for that. The next one is Idol Will Kill by Oscar. Now this is a band that gained a little bit of fame off of being in the Punk-O-Rama albums, though they're definitely not that mainstream of a band. And this is a very short-lived band as well. It only lasted for like maybe 3 years at the most. But this is Oscar's second and final album. I wish they'd made more albums, honestly, because this album definitely brings me back every time I hear it, because I heard this band when I was like 15 or 16 years old, and I discovered them actually through looking up epitaph bands from like the 2000s. I'm like, who's this? And then I go look them up on Spotify, and like, these guys definitely have something unique about them, The vocals kind of are some would say they're kind of like, you know, a lot of other Epitaph, you know, bands, but I think they're definitely kind of unique as of really the way they are, you know. It kind of symbolizes a youth kind of thing, because he definitely does sound pretty young. I think Devin Williams does sound pretty young in these, which he is actually. I think he's like 16 or 17 in a lot of these, or 18. And he talks about a lot of different topics, whether it be, you know, discovering who he is as a person, or, you know, just relationships with other people, friends and all that. I think he definitely does have a very good way of expressing that, which is why I think this album is an absolutely great album. And the next album I was talking about is Treatment 5 by Oscar, yet another Oscar album. This one was as well absolutely great. There were lots of great songs on it, like 13. This album, I think, was a little more typical than their second album. Their second album, I think they did more as of like instrumentation and even really polishing, just slightly, though not really too much more than this. Though this album definitely does have a very good raw type of sound to it. It was of course produced by Epitaph as well, and I think they did an absolutely great job with the production value of this album. I think they did a good job of making it sound raw, but not like completely crappy and off time and all that like some other underground labels do. But this album, I think, definitely has some songs in it that are for me, like I Cannot, and The Ballad of a Traitor, which is kind of a more funny song, which, you know, just look up the lyrics too, that's all I can say, or just listen to the song yourself. Some of the lyrics are kind of funny, but there's a lot of songs in this I can connect to, like I Cannot, and the song Alright, which there's a lot of songs on this album too that deal with like problems with friends, or, you know, just people leaving, or just listening to the radio and feeling more up after hearing it, which is the song Radio, of course, at the end, which I think definitely has a pretty good way to really end this album, with a soft kind of melody at the end with the bass and the guitar and the drum fills that were in it, and how it ends off with like a riff that's kind of like the beginning, and it just does an absolutely great job at ending the album. And I think it was probably the best closing song that I've heard from it. I think it's even better than Anchor, though. Anchor from Idle Kill is also an absolutely great song, though this one I think does an even better job with ending the album off. So this album, kind of like the second album, but a little bit more raw, and yeah, so that's why I recommend this one. Number 7 is Matters by Pulley. This album was another album it was produced by Epitaph, of course. This is, well, it's a little bit more polished than some of the other albums, some of the earlier albums by Pulley, but I think it's kind of more polished in a good way, though. It's not overproduced, it's not underproduced at all. It's just right on there, you know, with just making it sound like an overall great melodic and kind of meaningful album. So I definitely do recommend this one. I do love the guitar in this. I love the a lot of the beats in this. Definitely are pretty kind of crunchy, a lot like a lot of the other albums, and that's why I recommend that one. So number 8 is Scum by Rap-Why. Now this is a guy from England that, of course, kind of talks a lot about things I can relate with, like, you know, basically trying to find out what you want to do with your life, which I still kind of find struggles with from time to time, you know, just kind of thinking about what I really want to do, because, you know, of course I'm still a bit young, and I still kind of try to find, you know, I'm out of high school now, of course, and, you know, I try to find out what I want to do. I'm still trying to find out really what I want to do fully, though I do have my hobbies, of course, that help me kind of try to find out what I want to do more. But this album, I think, does express those kind of things very well, and I like a lot of the rhymes that Rap-Why does in this, and a lot of the instrumentals, especially the instrumentals, are absolutely great in this album. And there's all kinds of different songs in this album, you know, whether it be songs that kicked out of school or, you know, there's Revolution, which is a song about, you know, basically being brought down even more because you're getting less help for the problems that you have, and which I can kind of relate with in a way, you know, with, you know, just being young and not really getting the help you deserve, which I feel like happens too much in really society nowadays anyways, even here in America. So that's why I recommend this album. If you want an album, it definitely kind of reminds you of when you were a kid and just, you know, kind of the struggles you deal with and how you deal with them. I think this is definitely a good album for that. Next one is Bark Like a Dog by Screeching Weasel. Now this album, absolutely perfect album as a production. I think Screeching Weasel is the best produced album of all time and the best album as an instrumentation. For many reasons, this album is meant to be very melodic, which it is, which I do really enjoy. I do love melodic music. So this album definitely is one of my favorite albums of all time. And for many reasons, there's songs in this album, a lot of them talk about, you know, relationships, of course, but they do it in a very catchy kind of way, a catchy and melodic kind of way that really hooks you into this band. And right after this, I listened to Television City Dream, and definitely was about as pleased as I was with hearing this one, and I've heard pretty much all their albums at this point, and this album was the first album I heard by them, and definitely my favorite, and still is, even though I've heard all their albums. And there's the song Cool Kids, which is the most known song by Screeching Weasel, but still, I think this album should be promoted more, because I feel like not enough bands do this anymore, like, make this raw but melodic type of sound that is just absolutely kind of perfect, you know, with setting a mood. And I wish more bands did it nowadays, you know. So number 10, the final one, is going to be a kind of a different one. It's a drum and bass album, and this one is called Toast Machine. This is Rock Wattage by Toast Machine, and this album, it was all instrumentals. There was no vocals at all. There's just drum and bass and all this, and I was surprised. I was like, is there guitar in this, or is this just drum and bass? I looked it up because there's a couple parts I could swear there was a guitar, but there actually wasn't. This was all drum and bass stuff, guys, you know, and the bassist is definitely very good at making a good rhythm and good melody, you know. And this band is hardly even known at all, though I have heard a couple people say they've known them, and that the bassist was their bass teacher or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But this band, there's only one album by this band, of course. I could probably understand why they probably have their own lives and everything, so they don't have time to make all this music. Though I think they did a great job as of instrumentation on this album. They make great instrumentals, and honestly, I've debated kind of really trying to make more out of those instrumentals, maybe a remix or something. So that's why I love this album. It's really soothing to listen to as well. It's something that you can really just listen to late in the evening, kind of just think of it, you know. That's why I like instrumental music sometimes, not all the time of course, but I do like instrumental music like this when I want to think more, you know. So yeah, those are 10 albums that I recommend that aren't really known. So let me know what you guys recommend for albums I may not have heard of. Those are just mine. Share yours in the comments below, or, you know, wherever you want to, you know, contact me. But yeah, I might do more of these in the future, more of these kinds of videos. But for now, that would be it. So peace out.